valuable network already. So that's good. So welcome to the third NZBCA event of the year. We have some people online. Managed to successfully, hopefully, we have both an in-person presentation and an online presentation. This year we've been taking things up a little bit with our events. Last year we were very much simply let's get in the room and talk. This year everything's got to have a purpose. So we do have a purpose this time. We do. And I'm pleased to announce our speaker, Craig Osborne from Uplift RFP. No, that should be Uplift RFX actually, because it covers all of the different ones. It's bugging you think about that 2 years later. Yeah, exactly. He will do his own introduction just in a moment. And given the fact that I actually only met 35 minutes on it, it's probably for the best. So, just before going through the presentation, I said this was the third presentation, actually the second of the year. Actually, last week's book launch did not happen in this, unfortunately. So I brought a couple of books down here. I have 5 to give away, and they are for random things that I know will happen, but you don't know what they are as well. So the first book to be given away has already happened. So Phil, being the first person. And of course, to the Amazon, just for hosting. There we go. So, that's you can go need it.
Moving on.
Okay, so I'll hand over to Craig now, and about 20 minutes, maybe 30 with a bit of chat. Feel free to interrupt and let's go. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, good to see everybody. Look, as I say, like this is less of a presentation, more of a conversation with such a nice group here. So one of the things that we want to talk about is that economic benefits in New Zealand is obviously incredibly important to all of us. And the government recognised that and have put in place from the 1st of December some new procurement rules. Woohoo! So that's great. And what's actually really important is that we need to write our RFPs now to be able to reflect this. And there's a whole bunch of things that I've got here to be able to help us understand what does that look like? You know, how can we talk about ourselves in a better way? And we'll get through that. So I'll just take you through a little bit about me. I've been doing RFPs for way too long. If anybody's ever done one from Uplift RFP, our tool is because we built it because they're just painful. Nobody ever wakes up in the morning and goes, yes, RFP, I'm excited. It's like, no. So we're not going to change that because that's still a thing. But, and listen, I've worked in government for a long time. Worked enterprise side. I've worked with NZTE, NZ Story, Education New Zealand. So, and as I say, co-founder of the Service as a Software tool. You're having to move away from SaaS because of the SaaS apocalypse and all the things happening. So services software, where that comes from is actually, we've got an amazing tool, but to be able to get through from saying, here, I've got an RFP and now I need to get it to this endpoint, we have to help people through that process. And that makes me happy because I like working with people, helping them understand how to use technology. So, but today is all about economic benefits. So let us get into this. So this is a shift, right? So we've gone from broader outcomes, which was very much, and this is an example directly out of an RFP, but it was actually in February. So just understanding that there is a bit of a shift happening with the RFPs. You can see that it's pretty much a tick box. Do you basically pass or fail? And this was a self-assessment tool. So everybody comfortable with that? Yep. So we've seen those. And then the new ones that are coming through is these types of ones. So it's now value creation. Really cool. Interesting here, there are actually 7 categories. And they get called categories at certain points. And here they've called them out as Rule 8.4a. So it goes A, B, C, D, E, and it's category 1, 2, 3. So I'll explain those categories in a little bit. But you can see this one had a weighting of 10%, so it actually makes quite a significant difference. And this is another way that people have actually looked at using it. So you can see that there are different approaches. Here they have the 7 outcomes, the categories, and then they've looked at actually saying, here's how you then need to tell us, put in your answer, and then tick which outcomes it's achieved. So classic, there's a variety of things for people to be able to actually have to answer here. And it's one of the challenges we have with our tool, is basically trying to adapt to all of these different ways of doing it. But that all makes sense? Everybody happy with that? So the key thing for us is that if one is in the headspace of broader outcomes, and we use the generic kind of CSR policy as an example, if you put that into economic benefit at 10%, you're not going to be getting great scores, right? Makes sense. And it's really important for us to understand that before we had broader outcomes, now we've got these economic benefits and the mandatory and contractual as well, but I'll go into detail on that. So there are a couple of thresholds. So above 100K for goods and services, and over 9 million for the construction, it's mandatory and there's a minimum 10% weighting. I have seen some ROIs recently that have been at 20%, which makes it even more significant. So just know we've got to look for those. The other one, if it's below threshold, this is really important to know that actually it's supposed to be awarded to a capable New Zealand business. So it's really good. So if we can start to get our mindset into actually thinking about how we present this really well, it does help us whether we're above or below that threshold. So that's great. Now, there is a little bit of it's just under that piece there. Now, what is a New Zealand business? It's actually any company that's registered in New Zealand, but it's also for our Australian colleagues because of the pact that is with New Zealand and Australia, but they all have to be obviously showing the value to the New Zealand economy, but just to be really clear. So what I like to do, I'm a bit of a numbers guy. So I'm like, how do we make this our competitive advantage? So if there's a scenario, and there's a scenario that there was a competitor at a price of 480K and we put in a tender for 550K at a 14.6% premium, and we were even on the tech, and then obviously looking at the price calculation, we were scored lower because of our price being higher. If we really nail that economic benefit score, then we are in a position of premium points. Now, this is a scenario. Obviously, sometimes the price is separated from the other parts of it, but I just wanted to make sure that people understood that it's really important. If we can really start winning here while people are still in that kind of broader outcomes mindset, that is a big, significant shift. So, is there any questions or thoughts on that? Does that make sense? Yeah, good. Great. So the key thing next is that there's 3 things I want you to remember. So you need to be specific. So we employ locals. No, it needs to be 15 staff, all in New Zealand, etc. And I'll go into this a bit deeper, but be specific, be measurable, and you need to be verifiable. So we are measurable is like you need to put the numbers in. We need to actually address those numbers. And verifiable is we're recruiting 2 grads and it's verified by placement letters. Now, the reason why this is important is if anything you say is verifiable, it goes into the contract now. So if you're stating something, say you're going to be doing this as economic benefit to New Zealand, and you then say this is how we're going to verify it, they'll put it in the contract. They're supposed to. So that's really important for us, right? So let's just look at those again. So we don't want to be talking about ourselves in a more generic way. And to be honest, we all kind of talk that way, right? For many, many, many years, right? To be fair, we were kind of trained this way. And now the difference is that we really need to start getting into that specificity. Managed to say, which is a great word, because the key things, and what's quite cool is that we know we do all this stuff. We just got to draw it out now, right? It's not like it's anything new. Again, just looking at that measurable piece, it's really important to be, talking about the local university, talking about how much of the contract maybe actually need to be put into there, like the 25% of the contract value. And then the last one is just making sure it's verifiable. We're going to make a positive contribution to New Zealand economy. Nope, we're actually going to spend 80% of the contract value will be in New Zealand-based suppliers. Cool. So, don't want to labour the point, but basically you can see what we need to shift to. So here are the 7 categories, and I'm going to go through the 7 categories, and then I've chosen 4 to go through that are really good for professional services. So it's also not going to be your interest to go through all of them. So workforce development, you can see I put 8.4.8 there. So very simple, making better use of New Zealand's workforce resources. Then if you look at the second one, is New Zealand business use. So what about helping? This is really about goods and services and supply chains. It's really important. This one's about export competitiveness. So if you can either strengthen other businesses with their export or you're doing export, it's around your IP as well. Can that be exported? So those are really important things. Industry capability. So are you developing capability within New Zealand? We're going to talk about how, Dan and the team can help with that stuff as well. And then you've got innovation, really important to be able to try and bring out the technologies that you're using to be able to be in New Zealand. And then the 6th one, sustainability, which is one we've always looked at. And then 7 is social and cultural outcomes, which is super important. So they are the 7 categories. And if we look at a couple here, the key thing we need to ask ourselves, we're looking at category 1 here, is like, do you currently employ? What training do you already provide? What graduates and apprentices do you have? What support do you have for your team? Simple things. And as I say, most of the time, we might be already doing this. So we might have specific headcount. So 8 consultants, all New Zealand based across Wellington, Auckland, chartered accountants, and then our team is actively participating in structured leadership development through the NZBCA training pool. All verifiable, all very specific. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was your bit. That's great. And then measurable training commitments, right? So the thing for me is that the way I've got this information out before. Hi, welcome. How are you?
Sorry, I'm late.
No, that's okay. Well, no, that's all good. What happens is that there tends to be people in organisations who know this information, right? So what I've done in the past is I sit down with a group of people and we end up just recording the session and getting them just to talk about the stuff. What are you doing? What do you do for training? We do all of this great stuff. It's in those informal sessions that you tend to get all the gold. And I record everything these days because then you just can throw it onto AI and then go, cool, give me the thing that it's saying and what the most key points are. So it's a way of getting there really fast with this. Any questions on workforce development? Any builds on that? Category 2, New Zealand business use. So what you want to understand is who your current suppliers are, any subbies, materials and so where do you get them from? And if you've got any existing relationship with Māori or Pacifica businesses, that's really important for us to highlight here. Again, we subcontract specialist research to 3-person Wellington insights firm, 92% of project spend staying in New Zealand-based suppliers. It's the same shit, right? All the time. So I'm just repeating the same kind of philosophy all the way through. We'll go on to the next one, which is category 4, so industry capability. So thinking about you investing in equipment and software or systems recently that are New Zealand-based, super important. What about your knowledge sharing? It's key. And then collaborating with, industry bodies, etc. Again, you can look at all the things you're doing. So, our principal consultant chairs the relevant New Zealand professional bodies working group. Is the work that you do, Tanya. These sort of things could come into this. So you're done. That's it. We're only one of 8 New Zealand consultants credited in this methodology and have upskilled 3 client teams to apply it independently. All good? Cool. And next one, social and cultural outcomes. So, community groups, are you involved in local community? And I mean, at the end of the day, most of the customers and clients are actually involved in something like that. Do you think there's anything here that you wouldn't think that you'd be able to pull something out of here from with your clients, or is there always some sort of piece of gold that you could find? Any thoughts? Find something? Yeah, cool. And let's go through that. And then, in summary, it's mandatory, so we need to make sure that it's happening. It does turn up kind of weirdly sometimes in the way that the agencies are actually rolling this out. So you just got to kind of have a look through it and kind of understand exactly what they're after, but it is turning up, which is important. That 10% change really does affect the win. So that's why I'd like to talk about it as your competitive advantage, because while people aren't thinking about it, if you can really turn up strongly, you will have that competitive advantage. So I think it's super important. You're already doing it. So let's just find out from our customers, what are they doing in these regions? What for these categories are they doing? And how do we draw that out and bring that into our RFPs? And be specific, be measurable, be verifiable. They're the 3 things that I think if we take away anything, we've just got to make sure that we're doing. And then just on the last bit here, they will become your KPIs. So we've got to make sure that we understand that and that we make sure that we can actually deliver on what we say we can do, which is fine. And then the things I would love you to do and take away tomorrow is that we've built an economicbenefits.nz website. And what that does is when you turn up, it basically asks you what sector you're in and then what size of contract you're normally working on. Then what it does is it then asks you to select some of the categories that you're interested in, and then it'll provide you with the typical response versus the strongest response. So you'll start to see how that works. And then if you like that, then you can just flick us an email and we've got a PDF that basically outlines all 7 of them, gives you examples, and it's all tailored to professional services. So if you want to go and have a play with that, super fun, only takes 6 seconds to do. The other thing, start gathering data. That's the key thing. If you can get some data on your customers, then, looking at those workforce stats, suppliers, etc., you can get that downloaded guide. And then uplift RFP. So one of the things Uplift RFP does is it starts with a knowledge base. So you upload all of your old RFPs, and also you can bring in a whole lot of supplementary information. You can bring information about your clients' websites, about their tone of voice, etc. And you can bring all this information around their knowledge base around economic benefit. And then what the tool does is that when you bring a live RFP in, it will start to look at all of that information. It only looks at information, no hallucinations with our tool. So people appreciate that. And then basically what it does, it writes based on the question and all of that information in the knowledge base. So it gets you fast first draft. That's the intent. We still need to be humans in the loop. We need to identify it, look at it, verify it, make sure that we're all good. But it does get rid of about 50% of the kind of dross task of all the basics to go. So the other thing that Dan and I were chatting about was that we were thinking we could do a webinar on economic benefit writing and maybe thinking about that knowledge creation. So setting up with the knowledge base to talk about how we could actually do it for use cases for particular clients, and then you could actually start to load that up into your knowledge base with Uplift RFP if you felt like that was one you do, or you could just pop it into a document and you know you've got it there. And by the way, the Uplift, we have a free tier where you can go through a whole process of running an RFP, absolutely no charge. So there we go. Any interest in the webinar? I'm thinking maybe going a little deeper and having a session on that. Does that kind of resonate with anybody?
Mostly a nod, I think. I mean, where we were looking at that is that we felt that this was probably not quite a one-off activity, but it was a chunk of work you needed to do, and then you could reuse it.
Correct.
A lot of time and time again. So one of the problems and issues that you all have, and I know because we often say that we're going to do something and then 6 months later we check in and it hasn't happened, is just getting that momentum going. It's, can we get, if you could just allocate that hour to it, would we make good progress on something which I think is obviously as important as this in Wellington in particular as well. So we felt that would be a good hour worth spending, and there would be a product that you could use at the end of that. So
yeah, I mean, you can use Uplift and model, or you can just create the document. That's the most important thing, right? So any questions or thoughts or just discussion generally?
Interesting. I've just gone through RFP.
Yes.
Or an RFQ, and it didn't actually ask for those questions.
Nice.
Because I was not ready for them.
Yeah.
But it was, despite I still spent a good 60 hours on it. It's practical for everything that helps move that A.
It was interesting. It wasn't in that one. It was because I was doing one last night with a guy, and we were working through a construction one for Auckland, and it was full 10%, and we had to do a bunch of work to be able to get it. To get him up to speed with actually, I was like, hey, you need to be specific. What are we doing?
I suspect it might have took me over the edge.
I'm glad it wasn't there then, Tony. Yeah, that's it.
you're very calm now, though.
Oh, it's been a week.
Yeah, that's it. I forgot about it now. That is one of the benefits of getting prepared with a knowledge base, right? So the fact is, the analogy I use is like my dad was a builder, and in that garage when I was growing up had the wall with all the tools with the little marks around it. I don't know if anybody else had those. And so the man would like I'd go and do something, he was like, no, you have to put everything back, which naturally, and naturally I didn't. And then of course he'd come raging down because he'd find me and like, Craig, where the hell is the blah blah blah? Because he could look at his wall and it was like holes everywhere. And I feel like as knowledge workers, we're a bit like that. We're dropping our tools all over. The knowledge is sort of spread all over the place, right? We were talking about how you're trying to consolidate your data, right? Which is a key thing. And you need to do that if you want to get AI to help you with some stuff. But it's always good to do that when you don't have an RFP. One thing we're really learning is onboarding people when they're like, here's your knowledge base, here's the thing. And they're like, it's due in 2 days. And I'm like, I know, we need to be doing this. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Start tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it. I know, isn't it funny? It's just one of those, because it's off the side of our desk. It means we're trying to do our best work when we're actually got all our client work and billable work to do as well. Right? So the reason why I'm saying that is I feel like getting some of this kind of ahead of the game before you've got an RFP turning up, it's kind of cool to get that set up. And then when it does land, you've got all of that to refer to. So.
Some of them are, some of the RFPs is a bit light on what they're asking for at the moment, which are quite vague.
Are they?
So I think it's also the buyer working out how to use that to help with the selection process. It's been rolled out in the rules, but it's interesting seeing the different approach to that.
Right, that's it. Yeah. Well, it's hard because even on the other side, we know that side quite well. I was a Kiwi for many years, and so it's like I understand that. That's hard process, man, to get the all sign off and everybody to agree. Actually, this is how it's going to work, and then it can become a little bit. The outcome to the client is, well, for us to actually answer is sometimes not easy. Any other thoughts or?
Yeah.
Go, Scott.
You talk about the Trans-Tasman thing.
Yes.
I was working with a Crown agency who need to get some stuff. It isn't really available in New Zealand. We go off. We just treat Australia like it's an extension of New Zealand.
Okay.
But when I just the economic benefit, it was like very vague. So what's your interpretation?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, as I was saying before, it does relate to Australia because we've got that agreement with them, so that's fine. But do you know what? It actually comes back to the person issuing the RFP about how much they are actually going to be weighting towards the thing versus the things. If they're feeling like there's nobody in New Zealand that may be able to support them in that way. One, economic benefit, they need to answer that. That needs to be there because it's part of the procurement rules now. Two, it can be an Australian company, as we said, but it has to show some benefit to New Zealand. But how that's judged internally, like when people actually get the RFPs back and look at it and they're like, actually, there's nothing here that could do this thing, so we need this Australian outfit, we might just not look at the economic benefit. You know what I mean? There's the human in the loop part that happens as much as there's legislation around things. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah. I mean, the irony is, it's like, well, I suppose that there's benefit in Australia that's probably the same.
No. But
That's the point of the
exactly. Well, I mean, there's $50.5 billion that New Zealand government spends in the country, right? So we want more of that in here. That's what we call it uplift RFP. Our point is to try and uplift the ability for people to be able to tender more, win better, and not just go always to the big companies, right? So
You said then, sorry.
I was just going to say, can you go back to the start where you had the just picking up on that, the different levels?
yes. Sorry. I'll just go through. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so
And
this is
Australia.
what's interesting to me. So it's only New Zealand companies under 100k for goods and services?
So if it's under 100k, they have to award it to a New Zealand business.
Okay, but New Zealand business also
Could include an Australian company, correct?
so they could do an RFP for 100k.
They could. What's quite interesting is that we've done a lot of research. So one other thing we've built is that does anybody enjoy the Gets website? Love that. So we were obviously using it quite a bit, right? Because we were like going in there and having a look and see. And I found it had an RSS feed. And the RSS feed, I put it into Claude and was like, hey, this looks like the data that we could use, right? So anyway, my business partner, Ollie, is a technical guy. I went to him, I said, dude, this thing's terrible, as we know. There's an RSS feed. What can you do with it? Well, he literally disappeared for 2 days. And he came back.
You can do a lot.
And we built a tool called Better Gets.
Yeah.
So we have Better Gets. There you go. So we've taken all the data. We haven't scraped much, but we've pulled it out and we've now got Gets looking beautiful. So
It's there to scrape.
What was
Surely.
that? No, you're not allowed to. That's part of the T's and C's. So, but the RSS feed doesn't include. That's supposed to be there to help people, right? But it doesn't include the actual type of RFP. So, through all of that, we have an amazing amount of data on the last 5 years of all of the RFPs that have been won, what sectors are involved in all of these things. What's interesting is that 40% of them are in construction. Because they're like, schools and hospitals and different things. But this 9 million weighting, most of them are lower than that, right? So we were thinking, personally, we were a bit like, they should really lower that so that it was more, going back to New Zealand rather than, because what's happening in that area is it's going to these big companies. We're finding, and so what's happening is most of the money is going offshore, which is a shame. But so bettergets.nz, it's just gets but better. So you can check that out, and you can actually sign up to emails on there and select the categories you want, and then basically we'll send you emails every time there's an update. So have fun with that.
Good.
Yeah, but yes, we would love to get on the other side of all of this as well, and like help the agencies better make their lives easier as well. But I think that would be quite cool. Yeah. You've got really good info, haven't you? You've been working in that area for such a long time. So.
I mean, the government's always looking to the things that can streamline things.
True.
From government as well. It's just knowing who to talk to.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
And whether there's any
But that's it.
I'd estimate that only about 1 to 2% of the work in the government goes through volunteer.
It's been a lot less.
It's been heaps less, isn't it? Yeah.
There's a lot more coming close tender off the panels
Yes.
or direct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Since the new government came.
I do wonder how. I mean, that's interesting.
It's
I
a
didn't
really good
realise
point.
it was anything like that. I'm now thinking, I wonder how this would go down in Auckland, because that's different scale, different types of organisations are coming with RFPs. It gets into that concept.
But there's no
of
data on
business.
those tenders,
Yeah.
and no data at all.
No.
Nobody knows whether it's the same 20, 30 firms that is going into quote tenders.
Got it.
They're supposed to notify us.
They don't know anybody. And yet, I would say that 0.01% of each tenders, they say they've got it, and that might be a high estimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exceedingly rare. Well, it's exceedingly rare to see them ever
Yeah.
say who got tender.
Yeah, we've pulled quite a bit of data on that. So that's good. But yeah, you're right. It's not consistent at all.
The other sector that I think this would really help is the NGO, not-for-profits,
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
have to go through a lot trying to, particularly in the social sector where there's, mental health contracts or social investment contracts. So they are out there doing this work on the smell of an oil rig.
Yes.
And so a tool like this would be incredibly helpful.
Help them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. And because we're in Wellington and we're talking about government contracts and things, that's why we're kind of talking about GETS, but it does private stuff as well, right? So as I said, I was working last night with a construction person who owns a construction business. Yeah. And working through that. Interesting, eh?
A lot of the construction stuff too goes through panels where people who won the big contract.
Yes.
They sub-tender it out.
That's right.
So
Yes.
that's not visible at all.
No, that's it.
When you say subtender, literally they put it out.
Yeah, what
they
happens
did
is that there may be
themselves.
4 or 5 firms that get all contracts, the big ones like NZTE and Education, splitting towards the work.
Yep.
And then they sub-tender.
Right.
So there's no visibility through GETS or anything like that.
Yeah, got it. Right. Yeah, we're picking that up by the people who we're talking to who are going, I'm looking for that work.
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting, but it doesn't come through GETS.
New Zealand has one of the least transparent government procurement strategies in the entire Western world.
Wow. It's
I remember Transparency International.
right.
And our stuff doesn't even come close. Like it is in most of Europe and the UK.
Right. Yeah, is Australia
In
much more
Australia,
transparent?
they have all kinds of rules in there, and that's what they had to say what it to.
Got it. Yep. No.
It's exceedingly rare that we see
Very stringent rules about use of home ground for the governments.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
We've been looking into that as well because that's kind of our natural next step is to go there. That's $100 billion a year. So
Yeah, the issue there in Australia though is a lot of the state tender things like
yeah,
they give free access to New Zealand companies, but you have to have an ABN. If you don't have an Australian tax number,
yes,
Yeah.
you can't get tenders.
yeah, right, okay,
There's a lot of small businesses or small to medium that have stopped trying to get work from the government because they were spending hours and hours.
Yeah.
And so that's the other target market probably for this type
Yeah.
of thing because it's kind of how do you make that easier?
yes,
But they were, I don't know, the hit rate or the conversion rate was so low they just stopped even trying to work with the government.
yeah,
So they took the business offshore.
yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the challenge, and yeah, that's the idea is that we're trying to help create a bid team for people, so that if you and it's one of those bid teams you can pick up and use, and when you don't have anything, you don't have to worry about it, and then you've got a new one, you pick it up again, and off you go. So that's the intent. So awesome. Any other thoughts or builds on anything? Cool. Looks cool.
Looks
Awesome.
really good.
Okay, great. Well, listen, yeah, thanks for your time. And I hope that was useful. Yeah, go and check out economicbenefits.nz if you're curious about finding out a little bit more about the categories and what you need to say. And then, yeah, we'd love to do, I'm really keen to do that webinar and get into talking a little bit more around practical stuff. Yeah, so it'd be great. All right, thanks. Thanks, buddy.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. And I've got 2 more books to give away now. Great for people.
Oh, how good is that?
I reckon because it's this.
Phil doesn't get another one.
Oh,
There you go. First comments.
this-
First question.
Oh, great, Scott.
Nice, Scott.
So I've got one more, but I can't tell you who it's going to yet because it's not happening.
Oh,
So, yeah, anything.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks very much for listening, and yeah, thanks.
yeah, no problem at all.